I almost bought a Hyundai Ioniq 5N. Let me explain to you what my experience was as far as test driving the car and what I think about it, and the reason why I did not buy the car after I fell in love with it. You guys have been seeing it in the press. This car is hot. It's one of the hottest new cars out there. It's an EV. It's got 641 horsepower. I'm not going to go too deep into the spec, but some of the things about it I wanted to see in person to see if they actually held up. One of those things was, did the shifting feel good? Did it feel real, as the people who are reviewing it actually say it did? Also, how did it feel turning around corners? Did it feel like a sporty hatchback, or did it feel like a big old SUV? You know, what exactly was going on with the car? Really, where would this car fit for me if I were to buy it? Because I've got a truck, an F-150, that's my daily driver, and I've also got a Maserati Gran Turismo. As you guys know, that's my weekend car whenever I just want to go have some fun. So the question was, could this be a daily driver? Because I didn't want to get rid of my Maserati Gran Turismo. I'd prefer to keep that and then just drive the Ioniq 5N on a daily basis, because it's an EV, and basically you could save on gas, but it would still be a sporty, fun ride. And I'll be honest, it does work out like that. It does appear to be a type of car that you can daily drive for at least 3 out of the 4 seasons. Why I'm saying that is because the tires on our summer tires are Pirelli P0s. And you know, when it gets into the winter time, it's going to be a little funny dealing with that type of a setup on your car, because if it's below 40 degrees, those tires don't tend to do too well. I had those on my Maserati Gran Turismo when I first got it, and they just felt hard as rocks. So I'm not a big fan of the Pirelli P0s. I prefer like different brands like Michelin or something like that. But at the same time, I understand why somebody would want to go with that on, you know, a warm day or something like that. Totally makes sense. And from a drivability standpoint, it was pretty quiet. It didn't sound like anything was very loud as far as the tires go. The traction was there. The driving feeling was there. It felt really comfortable. One of the first things that I noticed when I saw the car was that it looks better in person. So when I'm seeing it on pictures and I'm seeing it on videos, you know, it's got depending on the camera angle, it can be kind of weird. If you guys have seen regular Ioniq 5s, this one looks a lot better. It just looks a whole lot more aggressive and more ready for action, as it should be, right? So the looks wise, it definitely looks the part. The one that I saw was the blue one. That was the color I wanted to see. It was matte, and you know, I don't know how that's going to hold up over time. I think I would definitely get that PPF if I were to get it, because you could kind of see it left some spots already. It was kind of looking kind of nasty. So I think the last matte car I had was basically a car that lost all the clear coat, right? And that was an older car. So I'm not sure how I feel about a matte car right now, as far as like a default paint color. But you know, it definitely looked pretty. It's a lot more orange. The accents are a lot more orange in person than on television. So that's another thing to take note of. I think the contrast looks good in person though, with the blue, the black, and the orange. The wheels look good. The whole package looked good. It definitely looks wide. It definitely looks bigger in person. It looks like a small compact SUV that's sitting lower. You can think of it like a Macan has dropped or something like that. I would equate it to that size. The interior, the materials, that was the second thing that I noticed about this car, in that it was my first time sitting in a Hyundai. Well, technically it was my second time sitting in a Hyundai, because I sat in a 5 that was in the showroom. And when I sat in the 5 in the showroom, the seats were very comfortable. It felt very good. I mean, it was like a very cushy feeling to the car. The 5, because it's basically track oriented, the bucket seats are very aggressive with the bolstering, which is what I was expecting. I think I could deal with it on a daily basis, but I could see where it could potentially be a bit of a pain for like a long drive or something like that. So I think the mileage on it, full mileage, will be 220 miles. I don't know how many of those miles I would want to do in it. The adaptive suspension works great though, and going through the different modes, because I've seen so many videos on people doing the reviews on the car, I knew what different settings to look for, which ones I wanted to play with, how to even move around on the screen. And I'll be honest, after playing around with it for a little bit, it really wasn't that bad. There's one screen that has like all the options in like a shortcut fashion, and you can just kind of cycle through it by tapping the different squares. That was my preferred screen. One thing too is that the buttons do certain things, and once you kind of figure out how it's making the changes, then it makes more sense. So for example, the N button, which is the N button on the left, right? That button, the one that's closest to your left hand, that button actually changes into in-drive mode, which puts it in a very, basically like the most track-ready version of the car. You know, everything's turned up, steering's heavier, the suspension's harder, you know, you're basically ready to go for maximum performance from that standpoint. If you click it again, you go into custom 1 profile. And if you click it again, you go into custom 2 profile. So if you're making changes on the infotainment screen and you're trying to change the adaptive suspension, it doesn't apply to the in button when you first press it. But when you go into custom, depending on what profile you're on, that's where it actually makes the changes. So then you can see things and feel things changing and different things like that. And I definitely, I feel like it's a car where you definitely got to learn a little bit of the quirks of it. It is also a car that's $69,000 and some change, and I'll get back to that. That's actually one of the reasons why I didn't go forward with it, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. But let me get back to my experience in dealing with it. So this is going from the reviews to real life. The sound of the car when you put it into E-shift mode, right? When you do that, at first it definitely sounds like a Gran Turismo. It sounds like a video game. It doesn't sound anything like, to me, it doesn't sound anything like a real engine, right? It sounds fake. Where the magic and where your brain kind of helps you is if you're driving it, it starts to feel real. It's a bit of a play on your head. When you're just first getting into it, you're thinking it's going to sound like it, and you're sitting and you're pressing the pedal. Yeah, it sounds artificial. When you're driving it, you get the momentum and everything else, and that's when it starts to feel more real. And then you start to get more of the dynamics within the sound, and it really helps to bring that out a lot more. So that E-shift thing is definitely a lot of fun. And you can turn it off. You can completely drive the car in eco mode, normal mode, or whatever, and it won't do any of the fake noises or anything. It'll just be a legit straight quiet EV and give you that type of an experience. It can be cushy. I like it in the soft mode, but I was kind of preferring it to be in a little bit more of a heavier steering because I like that personally. I'm more accustomed to that. But I think from a daily driving perspective, it can totally be a legit daily driver, 100% legit daily driver. The back seat's got plenty of space. I do think that it does suck that the seats are manual, so there's no like memory thing. And that's where I think I'm gonna get back into the cost real quick, because this spec that we have in the US, the North American spec for this car, this is not the same spec that they're getting overseas in Europe. It doesn't come with the heads-up display, which I love heads-up displays. It also doesn't have the moonroof option, which opens it up and will definitely give you the option of having some more sunlight within the cabin. I think that would definitely, if it had those two things, it would be a much more compelling priced car for that price. It'd be a little bit more luxurious. $70,000 is a lot of money to spend on a car with manual seats, no heads-up display. You already know it's the lowest trim, so in your mind, you're like, well, I know they're gonna bring this other trim out. Like, it's just a matter of time that they're gonna bring it over here so that we can get the same experience that everybody else is getting. There's no reason to keep a HUD off or to keep the moonroof off at all. Like, there's no reason to do that. Let me see what other parts about it. The sound system sounded pretty decent. It sounds like a normal Bose system, so don't expect to be blown away by it. It's definitely serviceable. It's okay. I've heard much better systems in other cars like BMWs, and I'd say it's okay. It's an okay sound system. It's not going to blow you away, but it is definitely better than just having like 4 speakers or 6 speakers. The subwoofer definitely helps a little bit, but it doesn't give you much flexibility when it comes to tuning. So I went to see this car probably about a week after this car came to the dealership. And the dealership was thinking that there was going to be a huge demand for this car. People were going to want to buy this car. And with that, they actually included the markup in the car price. So that's my first thing. So what was funny is, prior to that situation happening, I was actually really close and really ready to buy that car. Like, I had the title for my truck. I was ready to trade it in, and I was going to try to figure out how to make this work, whether it was going to be get rid of my truck and keeping the car outside, or potentially getting rid of the Maserati and having this in the garage and just keeping the truck outside. But that threw me off like pretty hardcore. It put a big stop to my enthusiasm about the car. And then going back and forth with the negotiations, about a week later, they came to me for the price that I wanted the car for initially, right? Which was basically MSRP, plus, regular admin fee and taxes, which was what I expected to be fair for a car like this. I'm not gonna pay markup on a Hyundai. Like that ain't gonna happen. It's not a Porsche, it's not a Corvette. I'm not paying markup on a car. And especially this car is literally, everywhere I look, the car is sitting everywhere. I think it's sitting because it's so aggressive that it's really hard unless you're like a driver who's focused on having that experience every day, right? It's really hard to justify spending $70,000 on that package. As good as it is, it's an EV still. And so it's gonna get better. And that's the ultimate issue. I know this car and the future editions of it will be better. This car could be better next year. It could be better because the next one's gonna come with the hood. The next one's gonna come with the moonroof. Automatically better. So then what does that do for early adapters of the car? People who are excited about it. And now their car's value tanks even more because the car is really base. So really it's almost like buying the most base version of a car when you know the other version's coming. You know that the Ioniq 6N is gonna be here within about a year or two, right? So you kind of have to think about it like it's a weirdly priced car for that situation just because it doesn't have some of these other items in it. It's not a luxurious interior. It's a fantastic sporty interior. And I think the seats could be better, and that perhaps for the US market, if they were to offer more adjustable seats that probably sat just a little bit higher, but had a little bit more cushion to them and a little bit more lumbar support, I feel like that would be a good medium for this car. I know they're coming out with the Ioniq 5N line, which is gonna have some dressings from the Ioniq 5N, but it's not gonna have the performance. But you know what? Maybe I'm going too far because at the end of the day, the bigger question is, do you want to spend $70,000 on a Hyundai? Do you trust that car brand to do that? And being an EV aside, I think that this car is definitely worth the purchase. I would say it's 60, 100%. Absolutely a buy. But I think for me personally, I'm just looking at the options. And the fact that we don't have what the Europeans have, right? That's a big deal to me. And I'm watching car reviews and they're talking about the heads-up display and how awesome it is. And I can't get that. I'm watching car reviews, they're talking about how great the moonroof is. And I can't get that. But the price of the car is essentially what it is everywhere else. So it's like, why am I paying more to hurt myself when I know I'm really just want to turn around and get the one that comes after it because it's going to be better? That's a weird thing too. As far as the range goes, I wasn't too worried about the range. I was okay with it being what it is with the EV. I think, like I said again, it's a dope looking car. And I know a lot of people are probably waiting for people to buy it and then put it on the market and then for it to depreciate like every other EV. But I don't think this one's going to depreciate as fast because I think it's going to be a favorite car for whoever buys it. As long as the cars hold up, I can't see somebody really getting rid of this car because it's really just a lot of fun. It really feels like driving two different cars. I want to be very clear. It feels like you're driving at least two different cars. It may even feel like you're driving three different cars depending on the sound that you're using in the car because, for example, the normal automatic mode, if I'm just using it with maybe like one of the other sounds that are built in, it's not too weird. The weirdest part about the whole car was the ignition sound during automatic or essentially non-E-shift mode, where it just sounds like it's just winding up and it just hangs. It sounds like you want to shift it, but you can't. So that's a really weird thing, and perhaps they'll fix that, but I didn't like that at all. But I for example, I wanted to drive with the ignition sound, but I didn't want that feeling of the engine hanging, and that was a bit disappointing. That wasn't the reason why I didn't buy the car, because I do think they'll update that, but if Hyundai is watching this video, like that would be something that would be nice to have fixed. And I'm sure you guys have probably gotten feedback on that one. Like, give me some layers to that sound. Give me something that feels like I'm actually like hitting it the next gear, even though it doesn't have to shift or move. Just give me like a like pauses or something. It's such a continuous sound. It gets really weird. So It actually does something weird to my ears a little bit, but that said, if I were buying a car, if I were driving a car, I would probably drive with the sound off to avoid that issue. If I was driving automatic mode, I'd probably drive in eco or normal mode mostly. And then whenever I wanted to, I would just press that N button and have some fun and just go at it, right? And just shift with the paddles, and that's cool too. So I think that's cool there. Is there anything else I want to talk about the car? Not so much. I guess we'll just see what happens in the future with these cars, whether or not people are actually going to buy them. They're still, from what I see on the Hyundai website, all of them are still for sale. None of them within my area have sold. The one I looked at was the most expensive one at 69, 8 something, right? I've seen some for 67 that were black. There's a lot of white ones. There's not many blue ones. There's less black ones though, as far as what I've seen. So, and the black one is gloss. And so I kind of was thinking like the black one would be a better option for me if I were to keep the car outside. Obviously with Hyundai, keeping a car outside, you got to consider the whole key situation. I have a Faraday bag, so my keys won't be compromised. And I would probably use the Hyundai Key app and do that whole thing kind of like what Tesla does. That's probably what I would do just to keep the car safe, because it does attract attention. One thing I will say too, other people do know what that is. As I was test driving the car, there were people who were trying to race me just based upon the car's appearance, and probably even watching some videos that were trending at the time. So if you do get the car, understand that people are going to want to test you. They're going to want to see what the car is like. If you get something that stands out like that blue is beautiful, is bright. And I think that might be the timeless combination for this car, is that blue. That's really interesting. I would love to see the white in person, and I would love to see the gray in person. I think there's a gray one. Haven't seen that anywhere, but yeah, I think that blue is probably the one that's going to be the most timeless and iconic with that car. So that being said, would I buy the Hyundai Ioniq 5N? I'm not going to buy it right now because, to be honest, I think that car really should replace my sports car, which would be the Maserati. However, the Maserati has character too. As both cars have character, the Maserati has timeless character. It's always going to be fun. It's a very analog car. It doesn't have a lot of digital stuff going on with it, and it makes all kinds of iconic sounds. The Ioniq 5N, give it a year or two, other manufacturers are going to take pieces of that, and they're going to start incorporating that too. So you have that whole early adopter thing where you're worried, if I'm buying something now because it's gimmicky or hot right now, is somebody going to come do it better? Is somebody going to make a better car or similar cars for less money or something like that? We'll see. Definitely don't want to lose money on the EV though. I tell you that true. We've seen what happened with Teslas and other EVs. They just crash in value after about a year or two. But the car is definitely special, and I definitely say if you're on the fence about it, go drive it. If you can pay it, as far as like if you feel cool paying $70,000 for a Hyundai, and say for example you don't have a sports car and you want something that's like a sports car, I think that's the way to go. Like I also mentioned, the tires. I'd have to do something with the tires. If it was my daily, I got to figure out what I'm going to do in the wintertime. I'm not going to drive Pirelli P0s in 20-degree weather, 30-degree weather. I'm not going to do that. Obviously, I know you guys are going to say, well, you can go get winter tires and stuff. Like, yeah, I could, but I'd rather just get all season tires and not have to deal with swapping tires out. Like, that's my kind of thing. So this is the dilemma. This is the dilemma with the car. As much as I love the car, there's a lot of things I have to figure out and I have to place it with. Fantastic car, Hyundai. I love this car. If you had this power in a lower trim, maybe not 641 horsepower, maybe just 450 or 500, and maybe that'll work. Maybe that'll be a little bit better. I don't know. I know that there's other options out there too, but like the Kia. But anyway, you guys let me know what your opinion are of the car. If you think the car looks cool, if you think the car's worth the buy, if you've driven it. If you've driven it, then I think you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated if I change my mind. But as of right now, I think I'm pretty content with what I've got. I'll probably just throw an exhaust on my truck and keep driving the Maserati on the weekends in my car club. So I'll holler at you guys later. Peace.